Hey everybody, Steven here. Just before we get into today's episode of Real Talk, I wanted to come on and give you some content warnings and trigger warnings before this episode. In this episode, there is discussion of sexual abuse, physical and sexual assault, alcohol abuse, and suicide and self-harm. So if any of those things are things that trigger you, you may want to skip over this one. And if you have small children that are around, we do have an explicit tag. But if you have children around, this may be one that you want to wait and save for later. So listener discretion is advised. Hey everybody, and welcome to this month's episode of Real Talk, the monthly conversation where Chris and I, or one of us, sits down with a previous guest and or listener and or anybody, and we let them tell their story. So this time we have the lovely Josh Hallmark from Our Americana, from the Karen and Ellen Letters, from Playlist Podcast. I'm just going to list a bunch of podcasts if you're okay with that.
Sure,
and we're
gonna even list the ones I'm not in.
Yeah, also from Serial. That he's from Serial.
I do them all.
Yeah, he wrote that one. So big heads up. And don't sue me, anybody. He didn't. We're not doing that. Yeah, so we're gonna chat a little bit about mental health and just kind of let Josh tell his story. So hey, thanks for coming on to talk to us.
Thanks for having me.
This is only the first or second time we've ever spoken. So no, for those of you, I'm surprised this mental health story that Josh is going to tell us isn't about the 10-day stint of horror that he had to spend with me for 10 days straight. But thankfully, I didn't traumatize him too badly.
Or it just hasn't surfaced yet.
Yeah, you've just pushed it down. You're waiting. It'll come back. But
I survived Stephen Pappas.
Oh my! Can we get T-shirts that say "I survived Stephen Pappas"? That's my wife needs one. Anyway, so for those of you that may be new to this is how these episodes work. On the first Monday of every month, hey, that's today. You're going to get one of these episodes, and in addition to the regular episode on Thursday, so don't sweat it. You're still going to get your episode on Thursday. And we're going to sit down with folks for a little more of a serious conversation about their individual experiences with mental illness or mental health, and just let them tell their story. So we then continue the conversation over on Patreon as an exclusive episode for those who donate at the $5 level or more. So if you want in on that, definitely head over to patreon.com/isthisadulting and give it the $5 level. You get all the bonus content, which includes these, but also includes Steven's movie adventure, where I'm working through movies, and other bonus content that we do. And I say that just so you know, like, this is not a paywall. You're going to get the whole story here for free, and the rest of it will be just a conversation between the two of us over on Patreon. So definitely check that out if you are interested, and we'll dive into questions and all that over there. So with that being said, we're going to dive right in, and before we get started, I'm going to let Josh give some content and trigger warnings for this episode, and I will also place those in the show notes, so that will pop up. So yeah, I'm gonna throw it over to you, Josh.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about sexual assault quite a bit today, in varying forms, and also just alcohol abuse, and we'll see what else comes up. But if something else comes up, Stephen will include it in the show notes and maybe tack on something at the beginning.
Absolutely. So yeah, so I'm gonna throw it to you, Josh. Why don't you? Where are we starting?
Well, I figured I'd kind of share my story in 3 parts, which is what happened, how I got through it, and how I survived it, which to me are 2 very different things.
Sure.
And for those of you who listen to Our Americana, you've heard this story somewhat specifically on an episode I released called Austin, Indiana, an Interlude. And, some of this may be duplicative, but I'm really going to be less specific and tell the broader story. So if you want specific details about what happened, that's a good companion piece to this. But this will be a similar but different, broader story.
Cool.
Awesome. So, ready?
I am ready. Hit us with it.
All right. So the story is I am 36, almost 37, and this is pretty much a 37-year story. So we're gonna jump around a little bit and be general and also very specific throughout it. But it starts when I was 5 years old. I ended up in a situation where I was being molested repeatedly for about 7 years by a family member. And, that's something when you're a kid, you can't really grasp the severity of what's happening to you. And you also don't know how to separate it as something traumatizing and also something different, because you don't have a worldly perspective yet. And so it's something that didn't really impact me till I was a teenager, and realized that I was having a lot of mental health issues and coping issues because of being molested. And we're not going to go too deep into that, but it's worth mentioning because it's something that really hit me later on in life. When I was 25, I think it's been so long, 25 or 26, I moved to Portland. And wait, scratch that. Okay, so when I was like 20, 21, and out in the world, I'd just come out of the closet, and I was really just kind of finding my sexual self. I think that's when my childhood molestation really hit me the hardest, because I realized that I'd based a lot of my self-worth in being sexual to other people, and people finding me attractive, and people wanting to have sex with me. And it's something, thank God, I was able to identify pretty quickly as a symptom of being molested. And so I started doing a lot of research, and the first thing I really was struck by was, at the time, there weren't a lot of books and there wasn't a lot of attention to men who were victims of sexual abuse. And it made me really sad, because it's a very different thing for a man, and also when you don't talk about it, it feels more like taboo, and it feels like you can't talk about it. And so I spent a lot of time just researching and trying to volunteer as much as I could, and I remember reading this statistic that I kind of not laughed at, but it said that most male victims of who were victims of sexual assault as children end up being victims of sexual assault as adults. And I thought, like, there's no way. How could, for as much damage as it had done to me, how could anyone let that happen to themselves again? And I think that's the worst part of being a victim, is that you look at your victimhood as something that you let happen to you. And that's not something I think I had the awareness to really grasp at the time. I still just felt like I had let this happen, and I was a willing participant, even though I was just a kid and I had no idea what I was doing. So I did a lot of volunteer work. I worked with Rain a lot. I was doing a lot of fundraising parties, and I had a website for a little bit that was focused on male victims of molestation, because I didn't want other people to feel like they didn't have a voice, and I wanted people to have resources. And then I got to a point in my mid-20s where I felt like I had really healed, and I didn't need to do that anymore. And I think also I was 25, I was distracted, I was having fun, and so I kind of just moved away from it. And then about a year later, I moved to Portland, and didn't know anybody. And the first friend I made got really drunk one night and beat the crap out of me and raped me. And the next day, I remember taking a shower and just sobbing. And all I could think of was that statistic, and how I had said that would never happen to me. I would never be assaulted twice. And there I was this statistic, and it made me feel really weak and ashamed. And it brought back the whole molestation thing all over again, and everything I thought I knew, and everything I thought I was, and how I thought I'd healed, and there I was, a victim again. And I started thinking, what did I do? What did I do wrong? How did I let this happen again? And that overtook me. I went into a really deep and dark depression, and for the first few months, I couldn't even look at myself. I cried every time I showered. I could not masturbate. I could not have sex. I just was disgusted with myself. And then I turned to alcohol, and my family has a very long history of abusing alcohol. And I had partied in my early 20s, and I knew that I had no self-control when it came to being drunk. I could have a glass of wine and I was fine. I could have two and I was fine. But as soon as I was drunk, I lost all self-control. And that felt scary, but also really rewarding at the same time, because I knew it was a way I could numb myself and have fun and forget. And so I started drinking a lot. And then I started having sex a lot with a lot of people. And I will say I was as smart as one could be who is abusing alcohol to deal with trauma. I was practicing safe sex. I wasn't having sex with strangers. I just felt like the only way I could heal from feeling like a eunuch was to have as much sex as possible. And again, it goes back to that learned behavior of my worth comes from being a sexual being. And I felt like that was a way I could win back my humanity, which is a really disgusting thing to say now, all the 11 years later. So I was drinking about a bottle of wine every single night. I was having lots and lots of sex with reckless abandon and just trying to get through what happened to me. And then I got pneumonia, which is not a normal thing for a healthy 25 or 26-year-old. And I knew right away when I had been assaulted. He did not use protection. It was the only time in my entire life I had had unsafe sex. And so I knew, and I kind of sat with it for a little bit and tried to live in denial as much as I could. And then finally I went and got tested, and sure enough, I was HIV positive. Mm-hmm. And that made everything so much harder. Because I think, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but I think when you're a victim of someone else, you think that you can heal from it all the way. That, you know, in a few years, it'll all be gone and you won't even remember. And in that moment, I realized this is a disease I'm going to have for the rest of my life, and it's going to be a daily reminder that I was raped. Mm-hmm. And sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm choking up over here being your friend too, so
and so I didn't know what to do with that, and I thought, I can't live that life. I can't live with a daily reminder of this thing. And not only was it the worst thing that happened to me, but I was still being a victim of my victimization. I was still blaming myself. I was still feeling like not only is it a reminder that I was raped, but it's a reminder that I let myself get raped, which is not true. You know, it's really easy to go back and say, like, he was drunk, I should not have invited him over, or I should have made him drive home even though he was drunk, or I should have made him sleep in a different room. But no one invites being raped, and I'm a small person. I was 100 pounds at the time. Like, I couldn't fight him off. I couldn't do anything, and you know, it has taken me years to come to terms with the fact that I couldn't do anything, and that I didn't invite it. And I think that sometimes there's a powerlessness in that, and that's scary, so you don't want to accept or face that it can happen to anyone. at any time by anyone. And so, in a certain sense, it's easier to blame yourself. So I started having suicidal idealizations. I continued drinking really heavily. I got fired from my job because I wasn't there. I mean, I was physically there, but I was not there. I was a zombie. I was hungover every day. I would drink the hangover away. I would sit in my room in darkness, and I didn't know how to get out of it. That was like 2 years of my life. I alienated most of my friends, and I just kept feeling like I shouldn't be held accountable for my actions because I'm a victim, which is deeply narcissistic, and deeply alienating. And I would get drunk and lash out at the people I loved, and then they'd get pissed at me, and I would lash out at them for being pissed at me, because how dare they be pissed at me because this terrible thing happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost a lot of friends those 2 years. And that made things worse. And finally, through just, I don't know, luck, the universe conspiring to give you what you need, a complete stranger reached out to me. I had been a writer for years and said, I love your writing. I've loved your writing for the past 7 years. I want to get to know you. And you can hear about that entire story on my episode. But basically, this person saved my life. And I ended up going to Cambodia with him and seeing what real devastation looks like. And that's not to negate what happened to me or how terrible it was to me, but it gave me perspective. And I came back from it, and that's when I started to make some changes. And that's where I want to talk about the distinction between getting through something and surviving something. And
right.
How I managed what happened to me was terrible and probably also very damaging. Actually, it was very damaging for me in the long run. It created a very tumultuous relationship with alcohol for me. It made me feel a lot of guilt about my narcissism and the way I treated friends and family during that time. It definitely further screwed up my relationship with sex, but it got me through it. And I spent a lot of time beating myself up for it. But when you're in that mode of getting through a trauma, sometimes you just have to do what's going to get you through it. You have to take care of you, even if it means making really bad decisions and really bad choices. It's easy to look at yourself and say what I did was wrong. It's a lot harder to look at yourself and say, I went through a trauma and there's no right way to handle a trauma, and the only right way to handle a trauma is to do whatever it takes to survive it.
Right.
And I think that that's really important. And that's not giving people carte blanche to be narcissistic or damaging to themselves when they go through a trauma, but it does mean that you have to forgive yourself for the things that you do to get through the trauma. And so here's the thing about surviving a trauma is you never fully heal from it. I think there's this myth that over time and work that it just goes away, but it doesn't. And every bad thing that happens to us, we carry around with us. And I think when we talk about surviving, it's how are we going to carry those things around with us? Are they going to be a burden, or are they going to make us stronger? And so I would say the last 5 years of my life have really been reconciling what happened and learning how to use it as a tool to be a better person. There's this really great quote that I don't want to attribute to myself from a woman, Carol Radziwill, who she wrote this really beautiful memoir called What Remains. Other people may know her as a Real Housewife of New York City. But on an episode of The Real Housewives, she said this quote that I try to live by every day, which is your sole mission is to articulate your suffering in a way that emancipates you and empowers others. So that's kind of been my journey to surviving and learning to carry this trauma around with me. The first thing is understanding how the trauma affects you. And I've read a lot of books, and books are super helpful, but it's really a personal thing. And so it's something I'm very cognizant of, and in a way that sucks because it is with me every single day, and when I am fighting with my partner or upset about something and I don't know why, or triggered by something, that's the first place I go. Like, how has being assaulted affected this thing, or incited this issue that I'm having? And as terrible as that can be, it's also very freeing, because in a way you're harnessing what happened to you and using it as a tool. And so, I have a hard time being vulnerable because it makes me feel weak, and when I feel weak, I feel like that's what led to this happening. Even though I know, because I've read the books and I've reconciled with myself, I didn't do anything wrong, there's still that part of you, and I don't think that part of you ever goes away, that feels like, because I was weak, this happened. And I mean that in every sense of the word. Like, had I been physically stronger, maybe I could have fought him off, and had I been emotionally stronger, maybe it wouldn't have been so damaging. And again, none of those things are true, but you carry it with you. And so I have had to learn to be vulnerable again, and that's really hard. My boyfriend, who I've been with for just about 7 years now, was saying the other day, "I've never seen you cry." And it's true, and I internalize my pain, but I just can't show weakness, and so that's something I'm working on so I can be a better person. But the flip side is I also have this really great power of perspective, where I will never complain about... Sorry, this is the first thing that came to mind, Stephen. I will never bitch about traffic again, because it's not a big deal. And that can be infuriating to other people, but you realize that some of these things that everybody gets so mired in and pissed off about don't matter. They're survivable. They aren't going to leave you damaged. They aren't going to be lingering deep inside you a year later. So that's super liberating. I've also learned that I need to feel beautiful to other people to find self-worth. And I don't know that will ever go away, but I know that it's there, and so I know how to handle it. And there's, especially as I get older, this strange vanity that has washed over me that I am so mortified of. And, there are days where, I'm pushing 40, I'm starting to lose my hair, and I'll look in the mirror and start crying and think, like, no one's ever going to love me. And when I'm done crying about it, I know why I feel that way. And then I know that I don't have to feel that way because I know where it comes from. And I don't want to let this thing that I was so afraid of living with me every single day live with me every single day. And I don't want to let it affect how I go out into the world with confidence. And again, it goes back to that quote, like, I could let this destroy me, or I could use it to free myself and empower others. So, like, I'm not going to cry in the mirror because I'm getting older. And that doesn't mean that people aren't going to love me. And sex does not make me who I am. And taking this grief and doing something with it, that makes me who I am. That makes me a stronger, better person. And that means I can help others. So, like, yes, you're allowed to feel sorry for yourself, and yes, you're allowed to momentarily be a victim of all the shit that happened to you, but just for a moment, and then you have to move on and be better and be bigger than what happened to you. So I think if there's a message I could give to people who are going through a trauma, and I really think this is applicable to any trauma, like, get through it the way you can, but then when you're done getting through it, use it as a tool and know that every day it gets better, but it's never going to go away. And you have a choice. You can mire in that and let that ruin your life, or you can be a better person because of it. So I think that's it. If you want details about this harrowing, traumatizing 10-year journey of mine, listen to the Our Americana episode. But I think for the sake of this conversation, that's probably all y'all need from me.
No, and I appreciate you being so candid and willing to be honest and open and vulnerable about that sort of thing. That's yeah, you're brave. It's a brave thing.
Well, I have to say, thank you, which I have a very hard time with also,
right?
Because of all this. But thank you, but also it's important. I think for healing, but also for helping others heal, to talk about this stuff. You know, I can't imagine how different my life would be if at 7 or 8 or 9 there were actually resources, or there were people talking about being boys who were molested.
Right.
So I think it's important we tell our stories, and they help us heal. Talking about it normalizes it and makes us not feel dirty, but it also helps other people and normalizes the feelings that make them feel dirty. So thank you, but also
yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, you know me and you know us, and if there's one thing we're interested in doing, it's normalizing things that have been stigmatized and taboo by society. So yeah, it's important. It's really important for people to hear. So before we go, we want to remind listeners that if you are in need of help coping with mental illness or trauma or anything, you're not alone. Please reach out to a mental health professional, or if you're in crisis, please contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. It's 1-800-273-TALK. And you don't necessarily have to be in crisis to talk to them. They will just talk to you. But definitely, if you're in need, contact someone.
And
we're
also,
gonna go for it.
Sorry, yeah,
No, yeah.
If you would like to reach out to me, by all means. I know how nice it feels to have a stranger you can relate to. So if the crisis thing scares you, or talking to a professional scares you, like, I can't solve your problems, but if you just want someone to relate to, I am available.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find your contact info on your website, correct?
Correct. And that is
awesome.
our-americana.com.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely do that. It's good to have as many resources as possible. We're going to continue this conversation as an exclusive episode for our supporters over on Patreon, just a little more chatting back and forth about what Josh shared. So if you'd like to be a part of that conversation, head on over to patreon.com/isthisadulting, and you can get that content there. So until next time, thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening, best friends. We will see you on Thursday.